Jessica. Thank you so much for being here on Dying to Live today. I am really excited to talk with you about bringing ceremony and ritual back to the death experience, and also kind of how you've transformed your work over time to include the death space.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be able to talk about all of that. So thanks so much for having me on this great podcast. I've really listened to a few of them now, and you're holding a beautiful space here for people.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. One of the things when I was looking through your site and familiarizing myself, one of the things that really stood out to me was the statement about how y'all are passionate about restoring our sacred connection to death, which I am also passionate about. And I was hoping that you could maybe talk a little bit about that from your perspective and what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always feel like it's such a huge conversation, right? There's so many avenues that we can start to go into this. Just on a broader scope, really restoring connection to death is something that I feel and know is so severed from us in this lifetime, in this current American culture, right? So at the bottom of it, there's just an understanding that we're not doing it and that we could be doing it better and we could be helping one another do it. And it doesn't have to be this, death doesn't have to be a painful process. It could actually be something that's restorative and beautiful within communities and families, just by having different understandings around it instead of going with status quo understanding of death, right? So reclaiming that is really just, it's the richness and the understanding of life to me. We have all of the life cycles that we go through, and we honor the life that we live and how beautiful it is and all of these different markers, and then we just stop at death as if it's not part of our life. Which is, there's a lot of like hilarity to that, and of course it's super profound at the same time. It's like, how do we make it this far through our life and then just not have these conversations around what do we want our death to look like, and how do we want to hold our family through that, and what do we think is going to happen in the afterlife, if there's an afterlife for you, and what are your views on that? So I think that we've just really adopted so much of what is without questioning what can be. And to me, there's a real integration there. It's like, that's not happening. Life and death are totally a continuum of one another. I think of, you can bring it down to like a kindergarten understanding of a plant, right? It's able to live because it was composted and it had the nutrients in the soil to sprout a life. And as it goes back into the soil, it regenerates more life. And so also there's this idea that we've really disconnected ourselves from nature. And to me, we see ourselves apart and above and aside, any which way you want to go with it. We're just not involved in it. It's like this other thing, and that we have dominion over, and, we can protect or not, or it's just that we take ourselves out of the cycles of it, and which also pulls out all of how we're continuing to participate in it, which we're not great at the moment as far as death goes. So there's a lot of conversation there, and we're really looking to have a lot of that fulfilled within Spirit Vessel and really help educate and understand and just hold that space for people to have that for themselves.
Oh yeah, everything you said, 100% yes. I'm feeling all of it, and you're right in that this conversation is so rich. It could go a million different ways on that front. Somebody that I recently had on the podcast that hasn't been published yet, when we got done recording, she was telling me about her religion, which she's, broadly Christian, and the fact that she has always been fascinated that the reverence for life supersedes any kind of ceremony, ritual, or acknowledgement of death. And that when it comes to death, like the body just doesn't matter, because it's all about the spirit and how the spirit has lived life, and then the spirit has passed on. And so when you get to that point, then there's kind of no understanding or comfort level with what to do with this very human situation that we're in, which is that we have a body and it stops working. And there's a lot of, obviously grief and emotion that's tied to that whole process that doesn't get acknowledged. for her specifically. And, one of the ways that her mind has really been opened in the past, couple of years is about the value of really marking death in a very mindful way and what that can do to help with grief and the people who are still living.
Yeah, absolutely. It's both sides of the coin, right? It's, we pass and we're also setting something up for our family so that we can continue moving on and learning how to regenerate what loss means to us in this culture and how to hold that space for others as we pass. And no, that's so beautiful. That type of understanding is what teaches future generations how to do this, right? And I know you're a doula, you're a death doula yourself, and as am I. And it's really just like being able to teach how to do this better, right?
Right.
And we're full body, we're full spirit, full body, full mental, full emotional, like we have the full range of capacity there. So why talk to one when you're a full unit?
Yeah, exactly. And, I assume for you as well, for me in kind of the doula realm, it's all about educating people as to what their options are. And, we are so far removed from death in this culture that folks might not even know that they can mark the occasion in specific ways, or that what might be helpful for getting through that grief process, in terms of ceremony and ritual and marking the occasion. So I love what you said about teaching future generations as well through that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. People just don't know their options is the thing, because there are so many options, as you and I know at this point. I didn't come into this work through being a doula. That was kind of like an ancillary. Oh, I want to take that avenue and see what that teaches me. And but the options are so vast and so few people understand them. And I didn't understand a lot until I really was just like digging in for myself too. But I'm really interested in the emotional aftercare side of things with ceremony. Like that's really where my heart and passion lies. We absolutely live in a social structure currently within the death culture that creates a lot of fear around it. And also, just perpetuates a lot of fear. So that's a huge marketing tactic to really keep yourself only knowing one or two things and being terrified of it. When you're like, again, you can open this conversation up to a lot of beautiful options that have so much more meaning for you and your family.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear, too, a little bit about, and I've seen this, and I'm not sure if you've experienced this, but I have noticed kind of a swell of folks within the artist community that are kind of moving toward at least part of their offering, if not their full offering, or some interest in supporting a more positive death conversation, and again, ceremony and ritual and ways to kind of support both the dying and the living. And wondered if you had seen that as well and what you think about it.
So this is curious for me because I'm really interested in what you know and kind of what you're looking at. Because I come from an artist community and background, and that's really how I entered this death world at all, where the interest in it came through making urns. And also just always being fascinated, like to no end by death and life. So I have a couple of friends who are ceramic artists who have like dabbled with urns before, for sure. And I would say I have a friend or two who are making like more ceremonial pieces, not necessarily specifically around death, maybe just more around like ceremony and holding space for grief. And but I'm curious what you're thinking of, because maybe more will come to mind as you talk.
Yeah, and maybe it is the broader sitting within the broader death community that has kind of brought this into my my sphere. But for instance, my doula collective here in Seattle, most I'm thinking through here, like at least half of us are artists in some form or function, and came into doula work in one way, but had already been interested in kind of death related art in another way. So that's one. And then two is, I hate to give credit to TikTok, but as I go through my For You page, I tend to get delivered a lot of different types of artists that are doing work within the death realm. Clearly, I'm within death talk. Um, but it's beautiful. Every painters, musicians, ceramicists, is that correct?
Yeah, you got it.
Jewelers, it just runs the gamut. And I think it's so beautiful, whether they're supporting, like you said, space holding or kind of actual functional vehicles of some kind. There seems to be a surge of it right now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a couple of things come up as you're talking about that. And one is just the awareness of like whatever interests we have, whatever vein we're looking at. And especially on social media, it's a feedback loop, right? So if we're interested in the death world and artists, I think that just frequency kind of brings it to us. So there's that. Also though, and more prominent is the conversation that as an artist and as a creative, we just live close to life and death. I think that there's a huge overlap there, and it's probably not something I can completely articulate right now, but as you said it, I got chills. And I was like, it's because you're a creator, and as a creator, you have the skill of making and really living close to just a more profound, deeper understanding of life and death, I really believe. And it's the creation aspect in there. So that doesn't surprise me that you would be an artist as well and called to this work.
Oh my gosh, I just got full body chills too. And in fact, I wrote that down. I think that's going to be the title of this of this podcast. That was really beautiful. And I think you're right. That makes a ton of sense. In the same way that I also see a lot of folks in the herbalism world and kind of the more natural plant world in general, who also live closer to life and death, and also then have come forward and want to support end of life care in some form or function. But I have really loved what I've seen in terms of the coming together of this community toward just a better way to do it.
For sure. Yeah, I think our generation is really waking up to that, and not all of us, but certainly the sphere that we're in. And there is more consciousness and awareness of what our interactions and reactions and how we're treating the earth and how we're treating one another, and just a deeper understanding and a deeper way of living is really showing up in us, which is beautiful. I look at my parents' generation and my grandparents, and so much of their generation was really based around family and survival and like stability and structure and masculine, and it's like, I look at my friend groups and our parents are similar in a lot of ways. That would have been kind of the zeitgeist of their time and mentality. And I look at us and it's like, we have more space just to get curious and be concerned about things. We have more information to do it. And I just think that we're really beautifully positioned in this universe at this time to be able to bring more awareness to it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think too, kind of the resurgence of the divine feminine and some of those more traditional roles that females have played over the years in terms of, or I should say female identifying folks have played in terms of shepherding transitions of all kinds for our communities. There's a real resurgence back to that now too, which I'm really enjoying.
Me too. For sure.
I had a friend. So I have a lot of folks who reach out and, if nothing else, maybe they're not listening to the podcast. Maybe they are, maybe they're not interested right now in end of life work. Maybe they are, but at the end of the day, I get a lot of people that reach out and say, thank you for just having this conversation, for putting these ideas out there and giving folks permission to look at this a different way. And so, at the end of the day, that's what I really put a lot of value in, as well as, even if all I've done in a day is put out an Instagram post with some thought that furthers the conversation. I mean, in this culture, that's a lot.
That's a lot. It is a lot. I think to help people, again, bring awareness and just to be able to give them some aspect of their own emotional capacity that it's like, yes, we're aware of, but oh, you just made me aware of it, and And just to be able to have those conversations in your family and take a thought back or take a new idea, it's all of these are just sparks, and we're just like these neurons firing off with each other to help each other grow and understand and have more deeper communication that's meaningful, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I really love about what you're doing with Spirit Vessel, and I'd love for you to talk more about what you offer, is then taking those nuggets of spark, those nuggets of information and that spark, and putting it into something tangible that helps people understand how to hold a ceremony, a ritual, how to honor themselves or their dying folks in a really tangible 3D human way.
Totally. Yeah, Spirit Vessel really started to download a few years ago for me, when I was living in the woods of Oregon. I mean, I like it's kind of one of those dreamy tales. I was like, yes, I lived alone in the woods of Oregon for a couple of years and had a studio, and it was like 200 acres of old growth on a river, and I didn't really know my neighbors. They lived so far away. So it was just like really this time for me. And it was after living in the Bay Area for a couple of years, just to sink in, literally, like, get back rooted, get connected. A lot of shit was going down in my life too that was just bringing up so much grief for me, and so it was like the perfect place to be totally held in nature and just like, again, just like recycling emotions. And so Spirit Vessel really started to come in from multiple angles, I would say, and all of my different interests were just like, oh, whoa, this. I love holding space. I love holding ceremony. I love being an artist and creating and helping people like think outside and do your own thing. And, you don't have to conform. And I really love, being able to, well, in this specifically, like just put your finger on something such as the death world that is creating so much anguish and pain for families and stress because we are just not having the proper holding space to do it in. So it's become so I'm getting a little off track from your question, but I'll get back there.
No, keep going. Keep going.
It's become so transactional based, instead of like, where is the transformation, the holding space for healing and human connection and like the real things that we're totally wired for, which, death isn't a mental process, it's an emotional and spiritual process. And why are we making it a mental process? And so that connection became really, really clear for me. And there's, maybe I'll create something for children, to be able to help them grieve pets, right? Because I was like, I got really into the study of epigenetics at the time, and I was just reading a lot, and I was, I love psychology as well. So combining that with art, and I was like, okay, so how can we help each other grieve better, essentially? Because of my own process of grieving, I'm like, we're not doing this. We're not having these conversations. I'm having a hard time myself over here, and I know everybody else is going through this in their own way. So I'm not singled out. Grief doesn't single me out. It's just like, it actually connected me back to everybody and like, let's help this. Okay. So Spirit Vessel really started as making pet urns. And I wanted to write a little ceremony book for children so that they could have a way with their parents, and their parents could have a way to communicate about grief, just by holding that like really sweet little space. And often that's a child's first experience of losses. You're probably very well familiar with the death doula work and in the world. So just really helping that conversation open up so it doesn't have to be such a multi-generational like grief train to hell, so so from that, as I was developing that, it with always the intention of being able to do this for families and for individuals. Right in the middle of it, COVID really hit, and I was like, this, you just can't see the things you can't see, right? But you got to learn to adapt where you know when you should adapt. And so my sister and I are just like, let's go the opposite way, and we'll come back here to ceremonies with children, and let's really help people have a space and teach and give permission and invite. And it's just like into a space where they can be together and share what they need to share through this like mass transition of loss that's happening right now. So I really wanted to create a product, and the product comes from my background of being a ceramic artist. Like, I just love making items and beautiful things and ritualized pieces that really live with people in their lives and in their days, and they have a lot of meaning. And so that's really where the urns come from. And so with the ceremonies, though, we were just like, now's the time to do this if we're going to do it and help people. And so we just redirected it, and it's been an incredible, incredible learning adventure the whole way. And it just feels so aligned with my soul in this lifetime of like, I was totally meant to work with death and really in this creative way.
Mhm.
So the product itself is, do you want me to talk about the product or do you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would love to, because it's so beautifully and thoughtfully put together. I would love folks to understand, what the various offerings are and what's included. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So currently the product is a package, and we developed it as a package so that really it's so all inclusive. So whether you're grieving or whether you're preparing for your own ceremony and death, it's like, here's all the educational information of just how to write a will and advance directive and what's a voice of attorney and how to take care of your paperwork and passwords. So there's that aspect of the package, which comes in the form of many pamphlets. And then there's, everything from how to open a conversation with your loved ones. So how to even open the conversation, like you're talking about, as people hear us, they're like, oh, that sparks. And how do I have that conversation with mom or dad? Not easy. And so then there's also the urn, of course, which is transitioning. As I mentioned, we're really putting in a ceremonial vessel and separating the urns from the ceremony packages so that people can purchase them individually, because for all obvious reasons, not everybody who wants to get cremated has a ceremony. And then really the bulk of the messaging and what we're really wanting to do is help people create the ceremonies themselves, and really giving families and individuals the power back to do that. It's the piece that's missing to me is just, again, like this emotional aftercare aspect of when somebody passes, how do we help a family grieve? How do you hold that space so that there can actually be a real holding of healing that happens? And that happens through being present and through communication and slowing down. I mean, ceremony to me at this point is totally counterculture in death,
Yes.
because we think of ceremony as looking like that memorial service that you all go into those plastic chairs and sit in that room and somebody gives a eulogy, and that's it. There was really no interaction except for like, I'm sorry for your loss afterwards, and everybody lines up and, says their condolences. It's like, I want the opposite of that for people. I want people to like have a real heartfelt experience. And so what we've created is really this anthology of ideas on how to set the space up. It's really like, if you're grieving, how simple can we make it? If you're planning, how elaborate do you want it? It's all in there. But the pieces are really like from start to finish. How do you set a ceremony up? You can look on our website, whoever's listening, eventually, and see all the ins and outs of that. It's a lot of little pieces. So, but a lot of that is the passages and prompts that we've written, and that really speaks to the emotions that one would be going through as they're grieving somebody, whether that's love or anger or fear or hopelessness. Just sharing. It's really sharing in the stories and the memories that makes it so alive. So it's truly a celebration of life, but we've really made it all encompassing so that wherever you're at in that process, your ceremony can hold the beauty of that and the intentionality of that and the memories of your loved ones. So it's very personalized.
I love this so much because, to your point, it puts the power of this back in the hands of the loved ones, community, family, whoever they may be, and allows them to really celebrate the person and have the person, maybe even dictate how they want to be celebrated in a very specific and personal way. It takes it out of the generic approach that we have right now in this culture. And that is really beautiful. And I love what you said about this being ceremony being counterculture. One of the things that I'm always I'm not surprised by it, but people are continually surprised when they start to understand that, for instance, when someone dies, it's not an emergency. You actually don't have to call somebody right away. You can take your time and do what you need to do to be with that person before you call anyone. It's not a medical emergency. And so the more that we can pair that kind of knowledge with the types of tools and the beautiful elements that you're providing through Spirit Vessel, the more people can feel empowered to do death in the way that they want to.
Yes. Yeah. I'm getting chills again as you say that. Yeah. I feel all of that. It's a family decision. It's an individual's choice. It's not something out there. It's not the funeral industry's choice at all, actually. And, back to our point earlier, you have so many options. So when people start investigating, like, oh, I have 3 days or however long I'm going to sit vigil with my family member, and really bring in the family unit to be able to heal right there, be able to grieve right there together, just like you're saying, and not be like, oh, they're dead and the dead body, we can't see that, rush that off. It's
Right.
I mean, people feel like death is horrifying. I feel like not examining all of the ways that we're making it harder on ourselves is the horrifying part to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And all of the ways that we aren't educated about, also just how to be with the process as it happens, especially if it's an illness or it's old age and it's long and drawn out. We kind of just truck through it without giving ourselves a lot of resources because society doesn't really provide us that education. And so the more that we can put out there for people to understand how to care for themselves, how to care for their loved ones through the process and beyond, what a gorgeous society, we end up being at the end of all that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what always strikes me about it is like we're talking about this as if it's like this new field, death doulas, and everybody's like, wait, what's a death doula? And like my friends are like, you're a death doula? Tell me about it. I'm like, well, it's this really freaking ancient thing that we used to do for each other all the time that we just stopped doing, which is caring for each other and just like really learning the process of death and being in community and holding that for each other. And so, ironically, ceremony is the same. It's just this really ancient wisdom that we carry in our bodies. So we know it as truth when we experience it, but we're not practicing it. And so it's really recovering. I think what we're doing in this culture currently is really recovering the importance and again, reclaiming the importance of death and how we view it. And so we're doing that one-on-one through doula work and through products like Spirit Vessel. But I just think like altogether, it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, it's part of our kind of grand collective remembering. And it occurs to me to ask you, do you have maybe something that people can do in their everyday that brings ceremony into their lives and helps them, get that practice on a day-to-day basis before they get to the point where they need to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. It's so individual based. And are you specifically saying ceremony like around somebody passing or just ceremony?
I think, so many things in life can be ceremonial. For me, it's getting up in the morning and having dedicated time with my coffee and my journal or meditation or something like that. Time that's just for me is ceremonial, but it could be a million things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of things as ceremonial and ritual, and they really interweave a lot, right? Like the rituals of my day are things that I really love doing every day and do them every day. So whether I love them or not, they're going to get done. So that's a ritual. But that has so much grounding force and stability, just to be able to like reenact something day to day, like you're talking about journaling and coffee, and like what a beautiful way to like set an intention and set the energy for your day. And for everybody, that ritual or ceremony, however you see that, it can be very, very personalized. Like for me, I have, so this is kind of funny. Currently, this is what I do. I have a picture of myself as a little girl, and I keep that in a book that I'm reading, and I open that up and like not every day, but I talk to her, like the inner child, right? So this is like Jungian inner child work, and just like going back psychologically through childhood and past, and it's like really like brain rewiring of, you're familiar? Yeah, you're shaking your head. Like,
I'm in it.
You're
I'm
done.
in it. Yeah.
You're in it. Okay, good. Okay, good. Preach into the choir. So really I make that a ritual to like go speak to my inner child, but like look into the eyes of my child self and be able to say the things that she needed to hear, and like literally rewiring my brain current time through doing that. So that's a ritual. I also love my coffee. But things that people can do, like I've recently begun listening to sound meditations on Spotify, like different like energy frequency hertz.
Oh, me
And
too.
oh, really? Cool.
Yes.
Like,
I probably have like 3 playlists now that I'm subscribed to. I love that.
nice, nice. I find that that just like really helps me center. And I can be doing yoga or working with it, and there's something that just totally calms my brain down and really does give me this like energy tap reset. So that's nice. I mean, just to get basic though, I feel like giving yourself any time at all to set aside time and just be like, this is for me. And I actually don't need to be doing like a whole checklist every day to enjoy this part of my life, which it could be just coming down for a cup of tea and listening to music. Like we're saying, it could be giving yourself a half an hour walk and making sure you're just having that space for yourself. I think anything that carves out space for you to be present with yourself is ceremonial to me. That's like, that's the real medicine of it, is that it gives you a space that's kind of like, this is not my regular day. I'm going to do this for me, and kind of hold it in that like little hoop or bubble of preciousness for yourself. Whether you're setting an altar, which I have a lot of friends who do that, or holding your crystals, or those are kind of the hippy dippy versions, but I'm totally on board with that too.
Got that too. Yep.
Yeah, I do all of it. Yeah, there's a lot of self-care, and then you can bring self-care into that, and of course that is self-care from the get-go. But
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all really great suggestions. It reminds me that I have not changed my altar in a while, and I really need to go do that. Um, so that's a great little project for this weekend to dedicate time to. But also, walking outside, connecting with nature, even in your own neighborhood, can be a really great support for yourself too. Like noticing, the flowers that your neighbor has in their garden and really looking at the petals and the leaves, or noticing from season to season what plants come up, what plants die, how they change, and kind of how nature transforms herself over time is a really great way to stay connected to that cycle of life and death. And when we're a little bit more connected to it, it becomes a little less frightening. So that can be a ritual that people can weave into their lives that may be helpful.
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, you're speaking to a very large ritual, but that is like any workaround connection to nature is so beautiful and
Yeah.
necessary. Like, what are we doing thinking that we're not connected already and not noticing that? I mean, we're just in a capitalist conveyor belt over here. Keep going.
Oh,
Coffee.
work, work, work. I know. I know. Do you do you follow the Nap Ministry on Instagram?
The map ministry?
Nap,
Nap.
NAP, as in sleeping.
I'm going to now. That sounds wonderful.
We're all about like the rest revolution. Love it.
Oh, cool. No, I'm totally on board with all of that, but I haven't come across them yet, so I'll check them out.
Sweet. Well, I have really enjoyed talking to you. I could talk to you for hours. I want to make sure that people know where to find everything. So tell us all the places. And then also, I noticed that you have a really easy way for people to kind of get in touch with what grief is and how to engage with it, kind of how to think about it, and how to normalize it for people as a resource on your site. So I want to make sure that you mention that as well.
Yeah, thanks for bringing all of that up and for the opportunity to plug a couple of things in here for Spirit Vessel. So our site is spiritvessel.com, and you can find everything that we're offering and all of our messaging and really who we are and what we're up to. On Instagram, we're my.spiritvessel. And our email, because we really welcome people to reach out with any questions or concerns, or you're like, hey, I might want to purchase this, but I have questions, like just shoot us an email. We're very available and accessible. So that is support@spiritvessel.com. And you can find, we talk about ceremonies and the importance of ceremony and grief, and really giving tools and resources to help people grieve. So we have currently, and we're building our email list around that, which is really to offer tools and resources. So it's not like it's not a promo blast for our product. Like my intention is really to like give people a community space when they're just like, shit, like I'm in it right now. I just need like 3 tools, like drink water, cry it
Yeah,
out, take a nap. Like I just need to be reminded of that because I need to be reminded of that, you know? So, and
totally.
we're going to put some love frequency gigahertz on there for everybody to listen to. Yeah. So check out our site. You'll find a lot of information over there, and definitely jump on the mailing list. That's going to become really fun and abundant and a beautiful little holding of ceremonial space for people.
Ooh, I can't wait for all that. Yeah. Thank you again so much for being here. And I look forward to more with you in some capacity.
Me too. This was such a great conversation. Thanks.